This is one of my all-time GRAIL sneakers, and this is the new version that Jordan Brand is dropping 14 years later. But which one is better? Let's find out. Tokyo Air Jordan 5s are one of the most iconic and sought after pairs of Air Jordan 5s of all time. And a few of the reasons for that is because not only when this shoe released, it released in incredibly limited numbers, we're talking in the hundreds versus the thousands, but it also comes in a very eye-catching bright yellow suede. While not as limited as the undefeated Air Jordan 4s, the Tokyo Air Jordan 5s are still an incredibly limited pair of sneakers that only released at one location, and that was at the Jordan store in Tokyo back in 2011. Now, I always thought that this shoe released to commemorate the opening of the Jordan Brand store in Tokyo back in 2011, but apparently the real reason, according to the sneakers app, granted in Japanese, so it had to be translated, and according to that, it says that this shoe was actually supposed to release to commemorate the Jordan Tokyo 23 basketball tournament held in Yoyogi Park, which honestly I had no idea about. I always thought that it was purely for the Jordan Brand store opening, which to be fair did happen around the same time, so I believe the shoe did release at that Jordan Brand store, but apparently it was to commemorate the tournament and not the store opening. Although I'm sure they both happened around the same time on purpose, so I guess you can say one thing or another and it's not really wrong. But hey, that's a piece of information that I didn't know. But since 2011 when this pair released, it really became one of the most sought after pairs of 5s of all time. Now, funny story about getting this pair, I actually somehow won it for free at ComplexCon. It had nothing to do with the fact that I did YouTube videos or anything. I just entered a raffle and I won, and I didn't even win a specific pair of shoes. I won the chance to go pick a pair of shoes off the wall, and this pair was still there, so I grabbed it in my size, and they made me wear it out, which I was happy to do because this shoe is fire, and I've had it in my collection since, I believe it was ComplexCon 2018 or 2019, so almost 7 years now. In fact, I actually did a full review of this shoe back at ComplexCon with Heskik, so make sure to check that out. There will be a link at the top of the screen, and I filmed a whole vlog of the experience of me winning this pair of shoes. Make sure to check all that out. It was a pretty wild day, and honestly is one of the best stories I have when it comes to sneaker collecting. It was such a good experience, and I got one of my grails out of it. So if you want to check any of that out, if you're interested in any of that, it'll be linked either on the screen or in the description below. Speaking of things that were amazing and are a big part of my sneaker journey that happened recently, I had the chance to sit down with Steven Smith, the designer of the Yeezy 700. He was like the head of design at Yeezy for 8 years. So he's the guy sitting next to Ye in like all of those famous pictures. He also designed the New Balance 550, the New Balance 574, the Reebok Instapump Fury. He designed the Nike Air Zoom Spiridon Cage 2. He's designing stuff for Crocs. It's crazy. I actually dropped a shortened version of the podcast episode on my YouTube channel, which you should also check out. Quick plug there. And you can check out the full episode, of course, through the Shoes Off podcast, which by the way, subscribe if you haven't, linked in the description below. So a whole bunch of videos to check out, but if you'd like to learn more about sneakers, then check out that podcast. It was awesome talking to Steven Smith. He is truly the sneaker design goat, or one of the goats. I think he's up there with like Tinker, honestly. But with all that being said, getting back on track, just over 14 years after the release of the original pair, Jordan Brand is bringing the shoe back almost exactly the same as the original. It's not exactly the same, but some of the changes that they made people might really love or really hate. But of course, stay tuned, we'll talk about all of that later on in the video. As far as the release goes for this new retro of the Tokyo Air Jordan 5s, it's actually already released overseas in Tokyo on August 23rd, which would make sense because it is a Tokyo Air Jordan 5. Now, I personally thought that this shoe wasn't gonna release on the sneakers app, but apparently it is. Apparently there's around 20,000 pairs made, according to random sources that I've read on the internet that could be true, could not be true. I don't know where they get the information from, but they get it from somewhere. Sometimes it's probably right, sometimes it's probably not. But the number I'm hearing is 20,000 pairs, which really isn't a lot. Now, I grabbed my pair for resale on GOAT, and obviously because it already released overseas, it came with Japanese tags because that's where this pair was purchased from. Now, as far as the US release goes, this pair is scheduled to drop on September 27th for a retail price of $215. And because there's only 20,000 pairs, it is pretty limited, so I wouldn't expect this shoe to kind of sit around. I don't know how quickly it's gonna sell out or what the resale price is gonna be like. Currently, I think this pair goes for around $400. That's around what I bought it for. You guys can check the resale price or grab a pair for yourself right now through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. I wouldn't be surprised once the shoe drops in the US if the price drops relatively significantly, maybe kind of like the undefeated 4s, although based on the amount of pairs that are in the world for those, and based on the fact that I hit both on Undefeated's website and on the sneakers app, I think there's probably more pairs of that than of this, but you never know. But now let's check out the box that the shoe comes with. So kind of like the release of the original Tokyo 5s, the box that the shoe comes in is pretty standard, at least for the time that this shoe released. The original box was primarily just a black and white Air Jordan 5 box that fit the 2011 box aesthetic. The new box is pretty much a black, red, gray splatter print box that's very similar to all the other Air Jordan 5 boxes that have released currently. There's not really any special paper. Of course, you do get gray lace locks inside the box. You also get a white set of laces as well as the Japanese tag that I was mentioning before. But that's pretty much it. There's not really anything letting people know that this is a very special pair of shoes. At least I think it's a very special pair of shoes. Now the size tag, as you would expect, is pretty standard. The official name of the shoe is the Air Jordan 5 Retro, which also makes difference. And the official colorway of the shoe is Varsity Maize Black Wolf Gray Anthracite, which, like I said, stays in line with how the original release was. So I kind of like that they're somewhat staying true to that vibe. But jumping into the shoes themselves, as a leather expert, totally joking about that, the Varsity Maize colored suede on the upper of the shoe, or I guess nubuck because it's a little bit less hairy, looks really nice. Smells nice as well. Does it smell as nice as the original? Well, this pair smells like nothing because it's 14 years old, so it's had a lot of time to breathe, but the new pair smells nice. At the end of the day, anything that Jordan Brand puts on their shoes, unless it's like, you know, the $2,000 retail Dior ones, which were handmade, or maybe some of the more like handmade crafted pairs that were super limited, it's all mass-produced material, so it's not gonna be ever really the best cut of material. If you watch the video that I did with an actual leather expert on the Shatter Backboard Air Jordan 1s, he kind of talks about the different reasons why they pick different kinds of leathers and the actual quality of leathers that they use. Seriously, I had so much fun making that video. You guys have actually been asking me to go talk to him about more pairs of shoes, which I might actually do, and kind of get his opinion on some other popular pairs of Air Jordan 1s. But to me, a not actual leather expert, the material looks nice and it feels nice. And I will say the saturation of the nubuck looks really, really good. And especially when compared to the 2011 release, obviously this pair has aged a lot and the nubuck does look different. It actually doesn't have as swishy of materials as the new pair does, but you can see that the color has aged a lot. It's actually funny because if you compare both sides of the original pair, one side is more yellow than the other side, and that's actually because of the way that I've had it in my studio. So for the last like 7 years, I've literally had this shoe sitting this way in my studio, and all of the lights in my studio have kind of dulled the color of the yellow suede to make it less yellow than the right side of the pair. So even on the original release, the left side is duller than the right side, which is kind of wild. And obviously comparing it to the new release, there's a pretty major difference in color. Also, we'll talk about some of the other color differences as we go, but this material does age and it will lose its saturation over time. However, because this newer pair is probably not as much of a grail to some people, they probably won't keep it as long, so you won't see it happening as much because these pairs will probably end up either thrown out or in thrift stores or something in the next like 2 or 3 years, so who knows. I do kind of want to have an in-depth discussion on the channel. Let me know if you guys are interested in this, talking about whether what Jordan Brand is doing, bringing back all these crazy releases, is hurting the culture, is a problem, or if it's actually a good thing. Now, in my opinion, kind of think it's both. This is the pair that I actually bought on Undefeated's website. I have a couple pairs of these. I love them, not planning to get rid of them. It's a grail that I never had, and I was really excited to be able to get these. Even as someone who got these, again, for cheaper than what I probably should have gotten them for, I'm not mad that Jordan Brand is bringing out this one. This is not the example that I'm trying to make. I don't mind that Jordan Brand is bringing back these unaccessible releases, like the Nerf KDs or the Wu-Tang Dunks or anything like that. I just think that the frequency that they're doing it is a little wild. This Varsity Maize nubuck looks nice, and I like the fact that it's super saturated right now. Again, that could fade as time goes on. As you move up on the shoe, you get to the eye stays of the sneaker, which also come with some more Varsity Maize. You've got these gray, or I guess I should say wolf gray TPU lace eyelets, which of course house the black flat laces. Again, this does come with a set of white laces if you decide to switch them out. Underneath the laces, you've got this really nice, I was gonna call it icy, but it's not really icy. It's more just like a very clear gray mesh that apparently is for ventilation. Moving up on the shoe, you get to this big reflective Air Jordan 5 tongue with the Jumpman embroidered in the center in a very dark gray color, which is actually found on other parts of the shoe like the sock liner. And when comparing it to the original pair, it looks like the tongue height is ever so slightly taller. It's not like significantly taller. So yeah, I'd say it's taller, but not by much. It's also interesting that the 3M tongue is kind of yellowed a little bit too. As you move inside the shoe, you've got this dark gray sock liner, which I mentioned. Of course, you've got your Air Jordan tag on the back of the tongue in white and yellow. And then rounding off the inside of the shoe, you've got your insole. There's the insole designed together. I think it says 23 and it says Tokyo Dist something, maybe District or something. I think it's actually probably cut off. Also, here's the bottom of the insole in case you guys want to legit check this pair from GOAT. I know you guys love doing that. I actually have a really interesting video coming out. You guys were the reason for, actually. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be really interesting. I've never done something like this before. Here's the original insoles. The foam actually feels stiffer. The bottom's different, obviously. So this is like floppy. They're kind of more stiff. And I will say I tried these on side by side and the new pair does feel better on foot. As far as sizing goes, true to size Seth strikes again. These Air Jordan 5s do fit true to size. At least that's the way that I like to wear my Air Jordan 5s. When it comes to shoes that have a little bit less padding, like the off-white Air Jordan 5s, I actually go down to a size 8.5 because they have a thinner upper. This shoe, because of the padding, really does seem to fit true to size. I mean, you compare it to a shoe like the Undefeated 4s, and this shoe is definitely thinner than the 5s. I think overall the footprint is a little bit thinner. Not that much though. So I do feel like the 5s in general are a wider shoe. If you like padding, you're gonna get much more of it in the 5s, especially around the ankle area. You've just got these huge pillows around your ankle. For me, I'd say true to size. If you have 5s, you know what these feel like, I'd grab your standard pair of 5s. Or go down to your local sneaker store, find a pair of like Great 5s or maybe Fire Red 5s or whatever's sitting at the time. Try those on first before you buy these because these will be probably more limited and harder to try on. Continuing back in the shoe to the midfoot, you've got more of this iconic Air Jordan 5 netting, again in this sort of semi-translucent gray color. And then moving even farther back on the shoe, at least on the lateral side, you've got this black kanji inspired detail. Now what's cool cool about this is that this is one of those details that once you actually see what it's supposed to be, you can't unsee it. So if you look at this kanji-inspired detail in the negative space, the yellow area between the black or I guess dark gray stitching, you've got the numbers 23. Until Heskix pointed that out to me on his pair, I genuinely never noticed that. To be fair, I didn't have a pair in front of me, but still, I never noticed it. And now I can't unsee it. It only ever looks like a 23 to me. But it's one of my favorite details and one of the most defining details of the Tokyo 5 other than the bright yellow color. Now, one thing I noticed between the 2011 pair to the 2025 pair is that the new pair is not as thick as the original, and it's actually embroidered a bit more cleanly than it was in the original. I do think I prefer the thicker lines. I can go back and forth. It doesn't really matter to me. They're both fine. It's a very minor detail. Then moving around to the back of the shoe, you've got the Jumpman embroidered in black. Just like the original release, there is no Nike Air branding on this shoe because there shouldn't be. It's always been a Jumpman, so I'm glad that they kept it. Obviously, the medial side of the shoe is pretty simple. There's no embroidery or anything like that. Then moving down on the sneaker, you get to this honestly iconic Tokyo Air Jordan 5 midsole. The base color of the midsole is a white. Of course, you've got the exposed air unit, which inside actually has yellow pillars to match the upper of the shoe, which is very nice. Running around the heel of the midsole on the top half, you've got this matte black color, which actually is different than the original pair because in the original pair, the midsole was a much glossier finish than it is on the new pair. The black and the white were very glossy on the original pair, and on the new pair, they're a much more matte finish. Moving forward on the midsole, of course, you've got your yellow shark teeth with black splatter print. On the original pair, you've got a lot more splatter print, which I do think I prefer. On the medial side of the shoe, while you don't have the shark teeth, you do have this little yellow triangle, which also features splatter print. On the top half of the toe, you've got this black rubber accented by this yellow stitching, and then on the bottom half of the toe, you've actually got the biggest change between the new pair and the original pair. So the story about this detail is actually way more interesting than you would expect. So on the original pair of the shoes, the bottom half of the toe came in black, which of course was the way that the retail pair released. However, earlier in 2011, possibly in 2010, there was a look-see sample of the Tokyo 5s which featured a yellow toe, and they called it the yellow toe sample. Again, if you want to check out the video with Heskix, he does have the sample, and that's the pair he's wearing with the yellow toe. He actually got it, I believe, from someone at Nike, which is kind of crazy. Check out his content if you want to learn more about that. But what's interesting about this newer release is that they added this yellow toe look-see sample detail, which was not on the original pair. And I've noticed with a lot of these bigger releases that have come out that are kind of re-releases of very, very popular or hyped up pairs of shoes, Jordan Brand seems to change like one or maybe two things on these newer releases to make them a little bit different than that GRAIL pair. Oh, interesting. Another detail that I didn't notice till right this second that's different from the 2011 pair to the 2025 pair is that on the 2011 pair, the bottom part of the tongue, the netting area is surrounded by gray nubuck, both on the bottom and the top part. Whereas on the new pair, you've got bright yellow, it's not nubuck, it's like almost like a neoprene type fabric that doesn't actually really match the suede, I'll be honest, on the bottom half of the tongue and actually surrounding the netting and on the top part of this bottom half of the tongue. So that is a relatively big change. Let me know in the comment section down below if that's a detail that was also found on the look-see sample as well. But now moving to the outsole of the shoe, you've got this icy blue rubber both on the heel and on the forefoot of the sneaker. Underneath the icy blue rubber on the forefoot, you've got this yellow Jumpman, and then in the midfoot, you've got this gray rubber with Jordan pressed into it. This is a really interesting release. I didn't realize they had changed the color on the tongue. That's a new detail that I didn't expect. Let me know what you guys think about the yellow toe accent on the new pair. Does that bother you? Does it not bother you? Do you not care at all? Let me know all those thoughts in the comment section down below. As someone who owns the original Tokyo 5s, honestly, I'm happy that this pair came out. And the reason for that is because now I can finally wear it. This pair I did wear like 2 or 3 times after I got it, but I kind of stopped wearing it for a little bit because I was too afraid to be honest with you. And then ironically, the older that it got, the more afraid I became to wear it because I didn't want it to crumble. So kind of an odd place that I found myself in with the original Tokyo 5s, but regardless, it's a pair I don't plan to get rid of just because it's dope. It's a crazy piece of sneaker history for me. It's still a GRAIL for me. Even with the new pair, I don't care about resale prices. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just happy that now I have a pair that I can wear and not feel like it's gonna break down on me. But Jordan Brand re-releasing all of these GRAILs is a really interesting discussion that I do want to have at some point. So stay tuned for that. Might happen on the podcast, which again, check out through the link in the description below. But either way, thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below if you plan to grab a pair of these when they officially release on September 27th. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.